Hi, I'm Tosa.
Hi, I'm Azam.
And together we're Differently Alike. On the 12th day of Dreamcatcher, this is Dreamcatcher. Dodging disbandment and other extreme sports is the final day of our series. It's kind of sad, but it's very important that we know the history of Dreamcatcher, so that we know where the girls have been and possibly where they're gonna go and why they do the things that they do. And without further ado, let's get into the video. I'm scared.
A quick disclaimer before we get into it, I do not have all the facts. And obviously, not every single detail is here. Every statistic used is readily available information for anyone who wants to find it, and as always, this video is not intended to point fingers at certain groups or artists, nor start any fan wars. Each and every one of the artists mentioned here is simply a part of understanding the story of Dreamcatcher. If you love Dreamcatcher more than anything, or you couldn't care less about them, wonderful, that's all cool. I just ask that you leave your opinions about the members, your opinions about the fandom, and your opinions about any other artists mentioned here out of your consideration for the video. Dreamcatcher has something of a wild story. I'm not 100% sure, but I think they may or may not be caught up in some cosmic duel between two ancient gods. One who wants them to succeed, and one who wants to destroy them at all costs. Dreamcatcher is a girl group under Happy Face Entertainment, and they've been around since 2014.
What music video
kind
is
of.
this?
The group has released 6 mini-albums of reasonable success. Kind of. And they achieved their first win in September of 2019. Kind of. There's a lot to unpack about the history of Dreamcatcher, especially since they weren't even always Dreamcatcher. Over the years, the group has attracted a rather convoluted legacy, and when you look at it all laid out, there's something about Dreamcatcher that seems to be constantly dodging out of the way of danger. While there have been some touch-and-go moments regarding failure or even disbandment, Dreamcatcher seems to be doing some serious gymnastics to keep themselves in the game. Let's go back in time. August 9th, 2014. It all started in the summer of 2014 at the Oak Valley Summertime Festival. It's nighttime and the stage is dark. Overhead, the intercom announces the next performance. Lights up. 5 girls in what can only be described as pure 2014 fashion take the stage under the name
Korean
Minx.
fashion.
They perform 3 songs, all singing and dancing and smiling at the audience. They laugh, they wave, they joke around with the audience, and everyone seems to be having a good time. And there they go, off into the evening. September 15th, 2014.
So dramatic.
About a month later, a company known as Happy Face Entertainment announced that that's their new girl group, and they're set to debut that fall. Happy Face has had a decent number of different names, but for the ease of the story, I'll be referring to them as Happy Face Entertainment or just Happy Face. A couple of things to know about them before we get into the goods. Happy Face is not the richest company, but they're very much average. They're not as rich as Woolham or Stone, but they have enough money to give their artists comebacks and promotion when the board meetings say the omens are right. Happy Face was founded by a production duo called E-Tribe.
The omens
You may
are right.
recognize them as the producers of a little song called G. Happy Face aren't tiny, they aren't massive. Now back to the story. September 18th, 2014. Minx debuted as a 5-member girl group with their song Why Did You Come to My Home? The song was pop influenced by hip-hop, and the music video followed a pretty standard 2014 concept, complete with the shorts and sweaters combo and thigh-high socks. Oh, and the random shots of girls in packaging. Remember when that was a thing?
Yes, that was
The
so
group promoted
random.
their debut for over a month, finishing off in late October. Right now, Minx looked like a proper mid-2010s girl group, a Baby Girls Day Ursa Star. They debuted with some pretty intense competition, including but not limited to Very Good, La Boom, Mamamoo, Lovelies, and Red Velvet. The song didn't have a mini-album, which may or may not have been the bestest idea ever, as the song didn't quite manage to chart during the quarter. But being a debut, there was room to grow, and maybe fortune would favor the bold. July 1st, 2015. Or maybe not. 10 months later, Minx released their
10
first
months
mini-album, Love
later?
Shake, in July of 2015. The song and
That's
music
why they
video
were
were
like-
all about summer romance, and the whole thing resembled an appeal
Okay,
to the
yeah.
many, many cutesy innocent concepts of summer girls looking for love. Now, we've talked about the 2015 scene before, but let's take another look at it. Oh My Girl debuted, Twice debuted, Red Velvet released their first full album, Girls' Generation released Lionheart. Both musically and visually, Love Shake didn't stick out from the pack. The whole thing was later described as a red ocean, meaning that there was absolutely no space for a concept like Minx's to stick out with everyone else in the industry. What Happy Face really wouldn't want right now is one of the most powerful groups in romance and dance genres to debut within 20 days of this comeback. So also we have G-Friend, one of the most powerful debuts of the year, occurring in the same month. Let's talk numbers. Eliminating the outliers, the average sale count for a girl group debut album in 2014 was around 3,780. In 2015, the average was roughly 5,060, with outliers eliminated. Minx's debut mini-album, Love Shake, made under 2,000 sales. That's under average for both 2015 and 2014. Not the worst, but not the best. Now, for a lot of groups, this is unfortunately a symbol of doom. It's much harder to keep yourself afloat without some form of album unless you're a big three group. By splitting off their first song from their first album by nearly a year, it looked like Minx's debut project might have caved in on itself. But the team over at Happy Face Entertainment had kind of an unconventional idea. In November of 2016, Happy Face announced that the group was going to re-debut under a new name. Happy Face pulled Minx from the shelf and got to work. New production design, new imagery, new sound, an entirely new instrument team was brought in. Superbomb was brought in to produce new songs. 2 new members, Gahyun and Hundong, were added to the lineup. 2 months after the announcement was made...
So 2 months after. Period. Wow. Is this gonna spoil all the other comebacks for me? Probably. I'm sorry, girl. Why would people want me to watch this?
It's okay, you're gonna watch.
On January 13th,
You're gonna see a lot.
2017.
So you won't be able to keep them all in your head.
Yeah, that's true. I'm old.
Or the Summer Sweethearts of 2015. They were Dreamcatcher, a group drenched in horror and elegance with a rather Victorian spin on the supernatural.
Yes.
Main vocalist Xian described their new music as a style that takes inspiration from metal and rock, especially J-rock, and mixes some of their elements with a core of pop inspired by the mainstream. Happy Face themselves described the music as pop rock and rock-flavored girl pop. They debuted with the song Chase Me, and people immediately noticed the creativity of the group's hard-hitting style and old world-inspired fashion.
Period.
The group was establishing an anthology, where each girl represented a different nightmare.
Okay.
They weren't coming to you. As stated in their debut, you were coming to them.
No.
Dreamcatcher's debut single album, Nightmare, sold nearly twice as many copies as Love Shake,
Hell yeah.
and Dreamcatcher debuted at number 20 on the
I got chills.
Oh, yo, me too.
we talked about fortune favoring the bold. This was bold.
Yes.
So bold that members of the groups themselves worried about the debut completely falling apart.
Huh?
However, it seemed the new style was just what the group needed to break through the waves of the market
Sometimes
and
you need to
start
take
getting
risks.
their name out there.
Yep.
That's taking New Year, New Me to a whole different level. In April, Dreamcatcher came back with Good Night and their second single album, Fall Asleep in the Mirror. Once again, they were present with their metal and J-rock inspired sound and a creepy music video continuing the story of their last one, where they finally hopped on the good foot and killed that guy. Now all they really needed was a debut mini-album, preferably without the 10-month wait in between. At this point, it had already been around 4 months. Then 5, then 6, then... Whew, got it in just before 7. Dreamcatcher's first ever EP, titled Prequel, hit on July 27th with the A-track Fly High. Prequel hit like a grenade, peaking at
Oh, really?
Yes!
Yes!
Remember what 2017 was for the industry at the time?
Yes.
Yes.
Coming back wasn't just about returning to M Countdown or Music Bank, no. It was about getting on the damn plane and getting yourself a ticket to the Western music market. Boom. The album hit top 5 on the Billboard World Albums and went number 1 on the US iTunes chart. iTunes was still a thing at this point, if you're wondering. All in all, it was a pretty successful comeback. No, the girls weren't doing G-Friend numbers or anywhere near the top 3, but the album performed well enough that in August, Happy Face announced that Dreamcatcher was getting a world tour. October 2017. Dreamcatcher had promoted almost exclusively as one unit since debut, likely to cement the theme of permanence and dedication to the new group project after the loss of Minx. It had been important during those first few years for them to appear as one solid team that wouldn't crack under the pressure of a demanding market. But now, with a slightly more stable grip on their group identity, they would need to flesh out their public images as individuals. Up until now, Dreamcatcher had largely stayed within their own bubble. In
What does
early
it mean?
October, Happy Face announced that Dreamcatcher and other Happy Face entertainment artists such as D-Once and trainee group HNB would be joining the ranks of Mix 9, a survival show created and owned by YG Entertainment.
What?
The goal was to
Dreamcatcher
promote the
joined
group on
Mix
widespread
9?
television, show off different sides of the group, and most importantly, give the public a taste of what Dreamcatcher members were like as individuals.
Wow, I didn't
Mix
know
9
that.
was a sandbox for idols of various companies to show off not only their physical skills, visuals, and overall idol appeals, but also start promoting their own personalities. One of the key necessities to longevity in the industry is personal attachment. Much of the K-pop industry is designed to sell fans an idol, a person to get attached to. For a group like Dreamcatcher, advertising your own personalities is crucial to drawing in fans who might not know or otherwise care for your music. Fans are more likely to support a group they feel personally connected to and involved with, and this is extremely notable about girl groups in particular, which can sound pretty Machiavellian, but that's another can of worms.
Yeah, I just
What it
want
meant for Dreamcatcher was that the fans who enjoyed the group at large and the potential fans in the making could see the members' personalities and become more attached to them. It would give Dreamcatcher 7 more selling points.
True.
On top of that, a show like Mix 9 would, in theory, contribute to the message that Dreamcatcher were committed to impacting and succeeding in the market. By getting together idols from all over the industry to mingle with, compete against, and befriend each other, Mix 9 would, again, in theory, allow the members of Dreamcatcher to announce themselves as integrated players within the business, true competitors with skin in the game. Mix 9, like the produced series, was a unique space for seeing idols outside of their own groups and allowing fans to get to know Dreamcatcher through groups they already loved.
That's
It
so
appealed to many
smart.
fans
Wow,
to see their
Happy
idols
Face.
But what
friends with
happened?
other idols, and it was helpful for idols to hone their promotion skills with other professionals. The show began in late October, and 4 members of Dreamcatcher, Jiyu, Shiyeon, Yuhyun, and Dami, were there to compete against 94
Just
other
4 of
female
them.
idols. Talent-wise, it actually went pretty well. The members were recognized for their skills and development, each one receiving a rank of B or higher. Out of
Wow.
28 female participants, Yuhyun ranked in the top 9 during the showcase section, and Jiyu ranked at number 4 in episode 4 and number 7 in episode 5.
Yo!
Things were just starting to heat up. There were some great performances and some rather awesome moments from both the members of Dreamcatcher and the other idols they were working with.
Is she crying?
Win or lose, joining
Why did
Mix
I look
9
like
was
this?
served to
Yo,
help
the
Dreamcatcher, as
goosebumps.
long as everything went according to plan.
What do you mean? What went?
Well, about that. About 3/4 of the way into the show, Dreamcatcher's activities in Mix 9 came to a sudden halt. Practically out of nowhere, Dreamcatcher packed up their stuff and never returned. Happy Face released a statement saying they were officially pulling Dreamcatcher from the show, and instead, the 4 girls would rejoin the other members and participate in a tour through Brazil. It was a mixed bag to say the least. While a tour would certainly bring in more money, there was a goldmine of potential
Yeah.
publicity to be found in Mix 9.
Especially if they were
The
ranked
members
so
would accumulate
high.
decent rankings, and presumably
Exactly.
the other industry benefits of joining Mix 9 would have strengthened as the competition continued.
Exactly.
With just 6 episodes left, the decision seemed dicey.
Hella dicey.
Until, well, I don't even need to tell you, do I?
No way. Tell me. Oh, they knew.
What is
Happy
going
Face
on?
knew.
What?
Wait. So they canceled the
Mix
debut
9
of.
flatlined and everything went kaput.
Ah!
Upon
Oh yeah, oh my
finishing
god, why
in
was
December and
I...
announcing
Why did I
the
link
winner
Mix
for
9 to
debut,
Minx?
YG Entertainment
Yeah, that's
canceled
true.
the
Mix 9
entire
never
project.
happened. That's
Money
true.
went down the drain. Months of time spent was now wasted.
True.
And YG stock completely crashed.
So
the
they-
companies and idols involved were screwed to high hell. For
It was
all
a
intents and
sign.
purposes, Dreamcatcher had basically sailed
Yes.
off the island just before the volcano exploded.
That's true. I remember Mix 9 didn't happen. Like, it stopped.
Gotcha. Yes.
Now, it's true there's no way Happy Face could have foreseen this. In fact, the idol who ranked highest in the entire show was Woo Jin-young, and 3 guesses what company he came from. It can't be stated enough
Really?
how damaging the failure of Mix 9 was to its participants. Happy Face themselves proceeded to file a lawsuit against YG Entertainment for 10 million won. Later, Happy Face started to reveal a fuck ton of the underhanded actions done by YG during the course of the show, including but not limited to YG unfairly extended contracts management period from 4 months to 3 years, which is extremely dangerous to
Yes,
start.
that's super
They
dangerous.
forced Happy Face and their artists into agreeing to the new terms under the threat of cancellation,
What the fuck?
refused to fulfill their side of the agreements by covering fees such as transportation, training, clothes, and
Fuck
so
you,
on,
YG.
and refused to pay any of the money that was owed to Happy Face for use
Didn't
of
she
songs,
just in the beginning of the
trainees,
show-
and other material.
of this
Happy Face
episode
described
say-
the entire process as
sorry,
the
keep your
overuse
opinion.
of album by a
But this is
large
besides
agency with
Mix Nine
strong
as a
influence.
general, you know.
Happy Face
That's-
said this
I
in a
know.
lawsuit. More than to be compensated for all the damages we have received, this is a symbolic amount filed in our hopes that Korean popular culture will progress healthily without the overuse of power
That's
by large
true though,
companies.
because how do you
In early
survive when
2019,
there's like big
we will find out that
companies?
Happy Face withdrew this lawsuit, and there is definitely some speculation about what went down behind closed doors. Regardless, it was a disaster. Now let's get back to Dreamcatcher.
Yes, please.
In all honesty, it seemed that Dreamcatcher had miraculously dodged a bullet
Can you
and was
imagine?
promoting their music internationally with the Fly High World Tour. By the power of sheer dumb luck, Dreamcatcher were out
Sheer
promoting in the world,
dumb
and by the end of the year, the world was starting to pay
McGonagall.
attention. Chase Me was included in Billboard's Best K-pop Songs of 2017 at number 19, and the group was crowned number 3 for Billboard's Best New K-pop
Yo.
Acts. Things were starting to look up, and with that, the year wrapped. Kicking off 2018, Dreamcatcher celebrated their first anniversary with a fan meet. All 400 tickets sold out within minutes. While Dreamcatcher may have not been the biggest group in the world, their work in the past year had started to bring in dedicated fans.
Oh, they're
Celebration included the
crying.
release of revamped material, new photo shoots, and the release of their fan-dedicated
Yo,
single,
look at Bami.
Full Moon.
Whoa.
There was also an announcement of a March comeback. Time passed, they wrapped up their tour activities, and March arrived. They released their official name for the fan base, but no comeback. The month went on, no comeback. March ended, April began, and still no comeback. Eventually, Happy Face announced that the album had been delayed, and fans were starting to get antsy. Dreamcatcher did not have a good history regarding album delays, and the last thing anyone wanted was a re-debut. April closed
Oh,
out
they were
with no sign of Dreamcatcher.
fans were scared.
Moving into May, Happy Face was utterly vacant. None of the members were making announcements, and the radio silence was starting to scare people.
Yo, why am I
What the hell was
always
going on?
for the groups that have
Finally,
these type
something
of
gave way.
things
An
happening?
official announcement told the fans that Dreamcatcher were named ambassadors for Microsoft's blockchain security technology. And everyone said,
Where's the album? We want the album.
hey, what? Come on, this isn't a comeback. Where's the comeback? I thought we were getting a...
I know this song.
Ah, I'm seeing too much.
And then Dreamcatcher dropped You and I. On May 10th, Dreamcatcher released their second album, Escape the Era. 6 songs, a budget update, and a hit on the charts. The comeback peaked at number 3 on the Gaon chart. and
This
debuted
was-
at number
this
7
I
on
feel
Billboard
that she's
World
still
Albums.
showing a lot, so
The
I'm
comeback
just
centered
gonna
around their iconic sound while also playing
read
well
the
with industry
subtitles.
interests. The styling, choreography, and album maintained their unique traits while also imbuing them with elements of Girl Crush.
Girl
and
Crush.
R&M, 2 of the hottest dishes on the table at the moment. The comeback sparked heat in the industry, and the fan base expanded into the mainstream.
into the mainstream.
This
Hell
was a good
yeah,
sign,
girls!
Because despite
It's still
touring
the
projects
MV, right?
Dreamcatcher had done the past year, they had yet
Oh,
to
no.
solidify a foothold across the ocean. You and I didn't draw blood in just the Korean market. Suddenly, the international fan base was stoked from the embers, and Dreamcatcher rose from the ranks of cult favorite to commercial success.
Ooh.
It was
Period.
looking more and more like You and I was going to be the song that solidified Dreamcatcher for good. They had a really good week. And when I say a week, I
Oh
do
no,
mean
a week?
For a full 7 days, it was Dreamcatcher's world. They received their first ever nomination for a win with You and I, and then
Oh no, oh no.
I feel personally attacked.
I mean, how, what? They could, I mean,
to be fair, it didn't matter who you were.
Yeah.
You were shunted out the door when Love Yourself Tear
exactly.
dropped. Popularity disparity. Now we're gonna hit some confusion in the storyline. Sensing the growth of their popularity, the group went into something of a frenzy. Riding the high of You and I, they released a third mini-album in September as part of their What comeback.
I don't know this one, so.
This is so hard to watch if
Exactly.
if you haven't seen the comebacks,
Officially
and
broke
I
the 30,000 sales mark for a
feel
new
like she's
album.
gonna do that a
The album
lot.
charted at number 2, which remains their highest position of all time as of the making of this video.
Wow.
They had a Japanese debut, and while they were met with some initial success, the activities in Japan remained largely unrealized. 2019. Regardless, they had another comeback on February 13th of 2019 with The End of
Yeah.
Nightmare and its single, Piri.
This was when I really started to get into Dreamcatcher.
This is so hard, you guys. This is so hard. This is.
I believe this is when
Okay.
Happy Face rebranded as Dreamcatcher Company, but some sources also say that it was a sub-label known as Dreamcatcher Company. Bless their hearts, I have no idea what they put in the water at Happy Face. And then off they went on yet another tour.
Oh yeah.
Here's where things start to get Shakespearean, and I mean that in the bucket loads of pathetic fallacy way. And no, pathetic fallacy has nothing to do with the word pathetic meaning desperate or depressing. Rather, everywhere Dreamcatcher went, things started to
What do you
go
mean?
wrong. Their concert in Jakarta was completely shut down for reasons that were never explained. There were scheduling conflicts and issues with tickets, and one of the theaters caught fire and burned down. Everything was going pear-shaped. After the tour, more Japanese promotions were released, but they went nowhere. In hopes of reigniting fan morale, the group opened applications for their official fan club that summer, but even then, little news came out of it and the whole affair slipped under the waves. While Dreamcatcher seemed to be anywhere and everywhere and their comebacks were reaching decent upfront numbers, there was something off about their success. No matter how frequent the comebacks or how long the tours, Dreamcatcher couldn't seem to create a sense of longevity. The spaghetti wasn't sticking to the wall, and after a few weeks of initial success, Dreamcatcher's prominence would fade and take a backseat to everyone else in the industry. They seemed to be relying almost entirely on reappearance power, but in the grand scheme of things, it seemed that not many people outside the immediate fandom would notice that they went silent. Dreamcatcher's streak of good luck had short-circuited, and the members were rightfully exhausted. It was time to take a break, get some air, and come back when everyone was good and ready. In the meantime, Happy Face did what they do best, something unconventional. Happy Face started having board meetings with Vespa, an indie game developing company based in South Korea.
Oh, okay. I was confused. Why would they do something with motorcycles?
Handshake. A handshake for you.
I like your tie.
I'm not wearing a tie. Have a handshake.
I heard the food would be provided.
I lied. Hello.
Your hands are very warm.
What if we kill one of the members and have her come back from the dead?
So here's my idea. Give Chi your big fucking sword.
Yes.
Period.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
I was thinking the same thing.
That's all I've ever wanted.
Match made in heaven. On September 18th, we finally saw what all those board meetings had been about.
My favorite song, Close Readers.
Ah,
My favorite song.
oh. Apparently she gets a sword.
Deja Vu was unlike anything Dreamcatcher had done before.
Oh, I don't want
The
you to.
comeback was a collaboration with
whatever.
Vespa's mobile game King's Raid.
Oh, it's so good.
Oh, that's what they were talking about in the comments. King's Raid. I could not understand
That visual
anything.
Dreamcatcher core was now combined with an emotional ballad, and it gave them their first charting song in the K-pop Hot 100. The album, Raid of Dream, hit number 3 and became their highest-selling album of
Ooh,
all
good
time.
job, girls.
There was still one milestone that Dreamcatcher and their fandom had yet to crack, a first win on a music show. They'd come
Let's do it,
close
you
in the
guys.
past year, but hadn't quite managed to snag one. With the emerging success of Deja Vu, they might have their shot. Deja Vu was nominated for a win by SBS's music show, The Show, and many fans crossed their fingers in hopes that Dreamcatcher would take home their first win. That night,
I think I remember what happened. I think I remember.
Ooh, 5,000.
상가 전문가 팬 사전 투표 점수입니다.
여기에 생방송 중 집계된 실시간 투표 점수를 합친 결과 더스 초이스의 주인공은
Huh? So what happened? They
the winner of the night was Everglow, taking home their first ever
Oh.
win.
First win stolen?
I'm gonna label this entire section alleged.
That's what people were saying
There
in
are
the comments
details that can't be
too.
confirmed about certain parts of this issue, and there's so many different parts to what happened, and a lot of it is loosely translated from Korean into English. I encourage you to do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Anyway, on to what happened as best as I could research. Just a little while after the show announced its winner, fans and non-fans of Dreamcatcher began
Non-fans
speaking
even.
out against the final scores, claiming miscalculation and even fraudulent behavior. So, There's a lot of controversy surrounding these numbers here. After the controversy gained some traction, a few fans started to claim that these numbers were already confirmed accurate and that the controversy was based on lies. As of now, there is absolutely no confirmation on any website in any language from any source that these numbers are accurate. Yes, if you add these numbers straight down, you do get 7,861 and 7,850. However, the addition of these numbers isn't what the outrage was about. It's that these numbers allegedly should have never existed like this to begin with, and that the calculation that was done to create them was fudged. So what went wrong? I'm basically going to be summarizing several articles that broke down the calculation process, the faulty results, and why people were saying it could have been intentional skewing. All of this information is readily accessible. I encourage you to look at them. One of the primary articles I'm looking at is this one by XDoubleStar, who, while not a website I'm deeply familiar with, provided a decent amount of verifiable information. I'm going to be paraphrasing a lot from them. Credit to the breakdown goes to XDoubleStar. Basically,
Thank you, XDoubleStar.
Row 2 is where fans claim things went wrong. According to XDoubleStar, we can establish beyond reasonable doubt that wrongdoing took place. Basically, 3 major things happened here. The first is that several points were shaved off of Dreamcatcher's YouTube score. Here is the viewer board of the show. Based on the show's own data, the score Dreamcatcher should have received was 1,472 points, higher than what they were actually given. Which means the show had data that gave one result, and yet somehow another number showed up. But the second thing happened in the category Expert Preferences. What is Expert Preferences? It's basically a category where the broadcast can award points to groups based on what they claim are preferences of experts. But this category has long been disputed by practically every fandom in the industry and even some companies.
I mean, it's
and
dumb.
it's largely considered a place where shows just skew points to favor certain groups. In this episode of the show, CLC and Everglow both received full scores of 1,500 points for expert preference, and Dreamcatcher received a 0, which came
That
as a
makes
shock to
0
some.
sense!
But even with a 0, Dreamcatcher still would have won. In order for Dreamcatcher to receive the lower final score that they did, the experts had to have given them less than the minimum amount of 0 and then masked it by announcing 0. Here's how that works, and again, these are all just claims as far as I know. Let's say that all the other data the show published in this section, except for expert preferences, was completely accurate. Now, let's remember that the minimum score for expert preference is apparently 0. When you calculate the full score giving Dreamcatcher an absolute 0 in expert preferences, their final score for this section is 1,972 points. But the final score that the show released for Dreamcatcher was 1,850, 122 points below the possible minimum score. How did the show give them a score over 100 points below the minimum? Fans are saying that they gave Dreamcatcher negative points in this category. Allegedly, Dreamcatcher was given negative points in a category where you can't get negative points.
Exactly.
Which would mean that their score was deliberately subtracted. Dreamcatcher would have been given a false score on behalf of the show. And if these weren't simple computer errors, this would be cheating.
The computer can't make that
Several
type of error.
fans and non-fans alike recalculated the scores using the minimum possible of 1,472 points. And based on the results, even if Dreamcatcher had scored an actual 0 in expert preference, which again is absurd to begin with, they still would have beaten Everglow for first place.
Oh my
This led many
god.
fans to conclude that the show fudged Dreamcatcher's score and even subtracted points from it so that they could edge them in just under Everglow. If this is what happened, subtracting points from a group's score is tampering with a group's ability to win, and that directly impacts a group's success in the industry.
Exactly.
So it's not really a surprise that some fans were disappointed and untrustworthy after the strange results were posted. Now, it's time to remember that this is not, under any circumstances,
That's
Everglow's
also true.
fault.
It's not their fault.
Everglow as a
But
group had absolutely nothing to do with the way the show's scores were calculated, and no one can deny that they are a monster rookie group with tons of support. In the end, this is just as much a blow to Everglow as it is to Dreamcatcher. Everglow worked extremely hard to get
Exactly.
what
and
they
then you
wanted, the
start
last
to
thing they
doubt
want is a
yourself, like,
fraudulent
am I
first
good?
win,
Is somebody
especially
pushing
regarding all
something
the
in my
attentions
favor?
on
Like,
rigging right now. And of course,
couldn't we
this
have
is
done
not
it
the
on
first
our
time
own?
A music show has given a win to the wrong group. In May of 2016, KBS's Music Bank gave first place to AOA for Good Luck, when the actual win belonged to Twice for Cheer Up. In May of 2019, Mnet's and Countdown gave first place to New East for Bet Bet, when the win really belonged to Oh My Girl for The Fifth Season.
I was so happy.
Something about the month of May apparently throws everyone's math skills out the window. The difference, of course, is that these shows both made official and public announcements about the
They
mistakes and
admit
corrected
it.
the math, as well as the true holder of the win. As of the making of this video, SBS and the show have made no such announcement. In fact, the only acknowledgement the show gave to the controversy were public tweets that seemed to passive-aggressively mock the group and the fans for the loss of the first win.
What the?
And that was that for 2019. 2020.
Now I feel
So
personally
let's have
offended
Dreamcatcher
because
now.
now I love. I'm
Exciting.
into Dreamcatcher. I get.
Oh,
Tommy.
successful group. Their continued sales presence puts them just under Lovely's, AOA, and Idol.
I don't know
Given
any
their
of these
commercial
groups
sales
though.
and consistent comeback rate, I feel comfortable saying that they're not going anywhere anytime soon. It could be that this underrated narrative comes from a lack of blockbuster success internationally or top 3 status, and as such causes them to fall into the shadows in the eyes of many international fans. It could also be, and this is my personal hypothesis, that many of the struggles Dreamcatcher has gone through point out a distinct attempt by shadier parts of the industry to stifle the growth of an unconventional group. The industry thrives on convention, unfortunately, and deviations from the norm are often denied, sabotaged, or shut down entirely. And yet, despite all that, Dreamcatcher has survived to today.
And they will
Queens!
keep
Something
surviving.
Fascination. Ever since
They will
first
keep
appeared as
thriving.
Bigs, they have been doing some serious parkour to keep in the game. Rolling, flipping, and flat out involving both disbanded like they're in the goddamn Olympics. It's pretty damn impressive.
This girl, I just know that
So
she's
here's
the
the
type
deal,
who
Dreamcatcher.
laughs
Right
at a
now,
funeral.
You might be K-pop's
She
Leonardo
deals
DiCaprio,
with
but
pain
you are by far some of the
like
most
memes.
unkillable girls in the game. Though I still have questions as to what you did to that one guy. Dreamcatcher have announced a Japanese comeback this upcoming March, and let's hope that both means actual March and more success in Japan. Go get 'em, girls.
Did it happen in
That's all
March?
from me this time. Best of luck to Dreamcatcher,
I don't think so.
and I'll catch you guys later.
Wait, 2019,
20.
2020.
Maybe
Did
because
they?
of
They
COVID.
didn't though. I remember then.
You did. You watched it, didn't you?
The Japanese comeback.
Or was it like for a game?
No. Remember when people were saying we did like our first reaction to Dreamcatcher and people were saying, "Oh, the comeback is gonna come out then," and then there wasn't an MV or something, or it was like a lyric video,
Wasn't
and then
it?
they were saying like, "No, you should wait till this date because then it was gonna come out."
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think
Wait.
she was typing in something weird, you guys.
I could be
Did
wrong.
they? Like 5 months ago, what was
Because
that?
I remember that Rose Blue was July, and this was Japanese.
Is it?
OST. No, never mind. I'm wrong. Endless Night. I'm sorry, we just found the Japanese comeback. Anyway, yeah.
Oh, is this the Japanese comeback?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they did it
Period.
2 days before my birthday. Anyways, so they kind of dodged Corona with this as well. Then still, wow.
I'm mad, but I'm not mad. Like I'm mad.
No, I am
that
mad.
they've been so like they literally threw them under the bus every chance they got, and that's not it. But they still managed to be the queens that they are and like live
That's
through
true.
everything. But I feel bad for the
true.
girls because I don't want them to feel like it's their fault or that they're not
Obviously,
good.
that's the thing. That's gonna happen. Like we already see, like it's human nature. You're not, especially I feel like Korean culture, they really have this thing where you're not supposed to blame somebody else, but you're supposed to look at your own. Where did you go wrong?
Yeah, true.
Where were you in fault? So I'm 100% sure that they were like blaming themselves, or if something went wrong, even like the building burning down, they would still blame themselves and be like, I'm sorry we couldn't perform, you guys. If it were up to us, we would stand in the fire. I don't know.
They really would.
They really would. I feel like they're that sweet. I don't know them that long yet. We're still in the process of becoming. I think
we are insomniacs.
I'm still a toddler. You're
No.
already. Okay, maybe I'm a kid insomnia. Or you're teen insomnia.
I'm not a teen. If you're a kid, I'm like a preteen.
Preteen insomnia. Okay, so we're getting there for sure. This is kind of discouraging though. I just wish.
I wish I could have done more, even though I can't.
This is what I mean with I wish we were in the fandom
exactly.
earlier. Then you can just like.
But then we would have been even more mad because I heard about the first win Rob of Dreamcatcher, and I was like, why? But I also love Afterglow,
Yeah.
So I was sad, but I was happy, but I was like, I didn't know how to
but
feel.
could you still be happy for Everglow though?
Now that I've seen this, the whole, like, the alleged whole story, I
You
don't know
can't
how to
even be
feel.
happy for them
I
though.
can.
Because they got robbed of their first win.
They did.
Even still, you know, your first win is supposed to be something that's very magical and special. Like your hard work finally pays off, and now there's so much controversy surrounding it.
Yeah.
You can't even be.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's sad.
We really need to give the girls their first win.
Really have to.
Ah, I feel so. Oh no! This is so sad. I don't know why. I mean, I understand that we had to see this to understand where Dreamcatcher was coming from, but I feel like I should have watched this first of all after I've seen all of the MVs that we're talking about in this video, because closing my eyes for half of the time, that isn't it, you guys. That really isn't it, and it really makes for not much of a reaction because I want to watch MVs cleanly and react to it like what it would be like if you see it for the first time. So now I saw a little bit of the outfits already. They looked amazing though. But I mean, I know that Jiu's gonna have a sword. Now I know. And then the sword is like, she has a sword in the other MVs as well too. She drags a sword.
But this was like a collaboration with that one game. We can watch Deja Vu right after this. I mean,
we were supposed to go in order.
that's true. That's true. Just wait. You'll forget it by then.
No,
we won't.
I want to
But-
watch it as soon as possible. But yeah. How do you feel now that we've done 12 days of Dreamcatcher?
Ooh, I wanted to give the girl a shout out too. That made the
Yes! Shout out to
Mera.
Mera.
Thank you so much, Mera, for making that video. Go look at her channel.
Yes.
All the credits go to her. We just reacted to it. And
We're
she made
obviously
everything.
like
also
always.
her voice is so nice.
Yes,
I really
it
love
really is.
Love her voice.
Like I was saying, 12 days of Dreamcatcher is at an end. This was the last video.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I feel like this feels normal now. This is like
The new normal?
yeah, it feels like weird now that we've like done like the 12 days. It's
No more
like,
Dreamcatcher daily.
it's like
That's gonna be so weird.
yeah. I feel like I really like I've grown accustomed or like I've grown like attached. I already like was attached, but not in this way. I feel even more attached to them right now. So I don't know. I mean, definitely like now I feel like I can in my free time, like you said, if we can like do more research about Dreamcatcher and everything surrounding them, and like except for music stuff. And
yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the 12 days of Dreamcatcher. We probably already gone over Christmas, so Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas, yay. I think what we need to do now is like figure out like is this something that we continue with other groups? Is that something that we could do? Is this going to be a continuous thing like with each
group we want to get into? Like we just
like what would it be? Like maybe for the Lunar New Year, it could be Luna.
Did you just make it up?
Because that makes so much sense, right?
Maybe you should do Luna for Lunar New Year. Like music videos. We can.
But they're gonna be long videos, then. So you'd have to do like a get to know of each member.
Oh wait, there's subunits. Luna has a lot.
Then we can't do this. Then we can't do the subunits. It's just like the solos, and then like you do like maybe the member, like who's this person, then like a solo. Yo, we're gonna figure this out and come back to you. But apparently, the new series that is coming after this one is Lunar New Year. When is the Lunar New Year? Let me.
Maybe we should look this up when we're like, you know.
Yeah, right. But we need to be prepared. Like maybe it's super 12th of February. Okay, so that's pretty fast.
It's okay though.
But we can do it.
Yeah,
we can definitely do it. So
I mean,
end
I
of
love
January.
Luna.
So we're starting this next month already. That's gonna be super fast. Okay, we're gonna do a lot of research. Thank you guys for watching the 12 Days of Dreamcatcher. The next series is Lunar New Year. And we will see you in the next.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, post notifications, and show us some love. Bye.
Bye.
어딜 거역을 봐 내가 앞에 있잖아 딴 생각하는 게 다 눈에 보인다